Good morning, fifth grade. So, yesterday we talked a little bit about the Articles of Confederation and how the articles led to Shays' Rebellion. So, I want to kind of focus a little more on Shays' Rebellion today. Kind of a quick recap for you. So, Shays' Rebellion, again, was when farmers in Massachusetts could not pay off their debts. Many of these farmers were arrested, their land taken, they were put in jail. And then these imprisoned farmers, they appealed to the Massachusetts legislature and they said, hey, could you help us pay off our debts? Could you lower the taxes? And the legislator, who were mostly lawyers and merchants, more upper class, they kind of ignored what the farmers were asking them to do and instead voted to raise taxes and make them have to pay more, which put them in a worse spot. So it made these poor farmers more of a burden on them. So this is when Daniel Shay was like, we've had enough. They broke into prisons. They released some of those imprisoned farmers. They then rebelled against the government and wanted their voices to be heard. So people have different views on rebellion. And Thomas Jefferson and Samuel Adams were two of those people in government that had different views on rebellion. So let's go ahead and take a look at their views on rebellion, and we'll kind of talk about it a little bit. So Thomas Jefferson and Samuel Adams, two of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, had widely different opinions regarding Shays' Rebellion. So we're going to read the following quotations from both men and then consider their views in the context of what you have just read. So Thomas Jefferson's view here, it says, I hold it that a little rebellion now and then is a good thing and as necessary in the political world as storms in the physical. So this is saying that Thomas Jefferson's view is that sometimes it's good to push back against the government. Sometimes it's necessary in the political world to rebel, to have your voices heard. The same way that storms are necessary in our world. So like when we have thunderstorms, he's saying storms are necessary in the physical world just as rebellion is necessary in the political world. Samuel Adams' views differ quite a bit. So his quote says that the man who dares to rebel against the laws of a republic ought to suffer death. So Thomas Jefferson saying it's a good thing to have a little rebellion now and then. And Samuel Adams is saying, no, those that rebel should be put to death. So widely different views. And either view could be accepted. So again, it's just, this is somebody's point of view. So if we were in the classroom, we would totally do the stop and check. But instead of me making you or having you talk to somebody, because it's kind of difficult to do via over the internet, via online. So I'm going to let you just look at this and I want you just to think about it. So it says you decide. Working with a partner, you would choose to support either Adams or Jefferson in the debate over rebellion. So I want you just to think about it. Maybe find somebody in your house to talk to about it. And I want you to look at the pros and the cons. What are the good things about rebellion? What are the bad things about rebellion? Because we're kind of talking about pros and cons right now. So just kind of think about that and think, what would my views be? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the excerpts from the Articles of Confederation. So that's just pieces that are taken out of the articles so that we can kind of look at them and explore them a little bit. So let's start with, let's get it here now. I can pull it up. Okay. So articles are excerpts from the Articles of Confederation. So Article 2. And now let me just tell you, these are worded exactly like they were when they were written back in the 1770s. All right. So the wording is a little weird. and some of it's kind of hard to understand, so I'm going to try to explain it a little bit for you. So Article 2 states, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. Wow, really wordy. Well, what it's really trying to say is that whatever rights or laws that are not directly listed in the articles that the federal government has, those rights and laws are automatically given to the states to decide. So whatever is not listed in the articles directly for the federal government to have, then those powers are given to the state to decide among each state to decide what laws they want to pass, etc. All right, the next one is showing Article 5. X in Roman numerals is, sorry, I lied. X is a 10. Sorry. Article 10 says the committee of the states, or any 9 of them, shall be authorized to execute in the recess of Congress such of the powers of Congress as the United States in Congress assembled, by the consent of the 9 states, shall from time to time think expedient to vest them with, provided that no power be delegated to the said committee, for the exercise of which, by the Articles of Confederation, the voice of 9 states in the Congress of the United States assembled be requisite. Again, really wordy. So what Article 10 is trying to say is more or less, kind of condensed it down, for a bill to be passed, 9 of the 13 states need to agree on it. Okay? So they need the consent of 9 of the 13 states. All right. And the last one we're going to look at was Article 13. Okay? XIII is 10, 1, 1, 1, so that's 10 and 13. All right. This one states, all bills of credit emitted or monies borrowed and debts contracted by or under the authority of Congress before the assembling of the United States, in pursuance of the present Confederation, shall be deemed and considered as a charge against the United States. For payment and satisfaction whereof, the said United States and the public faith are hereby solemnly pledged. Again, very wordy. What does that mean? Well, this is trying to say that all the debts, or money that people borrowed, that happened before the Revolutionary War, before the states decided, hey, we're the United States, are still debts and they still need to be repaid. But there's not really an explanation of how those are going to be repaid. So each state gets to decide on their own how they're going to deal with states repaying money. And so this is kind of, again, where Massachusetts had the problem of Shays' Rebellion and getting them to pay money back to the government. The articles also stated that each state should help pay for the nation's debt. So whenever the United States was fighting against the Revolutionary War, or fighting against Britain in the Revolutionary War, we accrued debts. We borrowed money that needs to be repaid. So the Congress decided that, hey, we need the states to help pay for these debts. Well, the Articles of Confederation didn't give the federal government enough power to force the states to pay the debt. So the states only paid a very small portion of the debt that the United States had actually accrued. So again, the federal government didn't have enough authority to force the states to pay money for those debts. All right, so let's go ahead and look at a primary source. So we have Alexander Hamilton, who talks a little bit about the Articles of Confederation. So let me see if I can fix this here. All right, so he talks a little bit about the Articles of Confederation. So let's read what he has to say, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it and break it down. So again, here's Alexander Hamilton. And this is in his words. But the Confederation itself is defective and requires to be altered. It is neither fit for war nor peace. The idea of an uncontrollable sovereignty in each state over its internal police will defeat the other powers given to Congress and make our union feeble and precarious. There are instances without number where acts necessary for the general good and which rise out of the powers given to Congress must interfere with the internal police of the states. So this was a letter to James Duane from Alexander Hamilton in September of 1780. All right, so we're going to try and go through this a little bit. And so we're going to look at the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation that Alexander Hamilton identified in his letter. So if we look at it, he first states that it is neither fit for war nor peace. So you can see that right there. So he's saying, I'm sorry, let me go back to this really quick. It says, but the Confederation itself is defective. Defective means broken. It's not working and it needs to be altered. Okay, so defective and needs to be altered. It's broken and needs to be fixed. So then here it says, it is neither fit for war nor peace, meaning that it doesn't help, the Articles doesn't help us if we're at war or if we're at peace. It just doesn't fit. It just doesn't work. Okay, the next sentence says, the idea of uncontrollable sovereignty in each state over its internal police will defeat the other powers given to Congress and make our union feeble and precarious. So it's saying that the ideas of sovereignty in each state, so each state's powers, the sovereignty in each state defeats, overpowers the powers given to Congress. So it's saying this doesn't work. If the states can overthrow everything that the federal government or the Congress does, it just doesn't work. The states have too much power. So it's saying that it makes our union feeble and precarious. So what do you think that word feeble means? Okay, so if you think about it, it says that since the states have more power than the federal government, it'll make our union feeble and precarious. Feeble, another word for feeble would be weak. It makes our federal government weak. Okay, so that's a synonym for feeble. So going on, it says there are instances without number where acts necessary for the general good and which rise out of the powers given to Congress must interfere with the internal police of the states. All right, so that's really trying to tell us that acts or things that are necessary for the general good, the good of all people, the general people in society, the good of them, sometimes has to interfere with the internal police or the rights that were given to the states. Okay, so we have to look at what's good for the general good, what's good for the majority of the people, and sometimes that might interfere with the rights of the states themselves. So that is what Alexander Hamilton is trying to say. So he points out a lot of weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, and he's saying, you know what, they're defective, they need to be altered. And this is where we're going to get into, all right, now we know that there's something wrong, let's fix it. And this is where the Constitution of the United States is going to be put into place. So let's go ahead and fill out our chart with the pros and cons. So I'm going to go ahead and move to the next page here in just a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and look again at the pros and cons sheet here. All right, so with what we just read and with the pages we read yesterday, so it says to read pages 290 to 297 in your research companion, which we did yesterday. We're going to use our investigative skills to identify the pros and cons of the Articles of Confederation. Now, if we were in class, you guys would be working on this in partners, but I just want to kind of go through. I want to point out some of the pros and cons, and then I'm just gonna give you a chance to kind of type a few of these in as we go along. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with a couple of the pros. I just went ahead and filled this out just to make it a little bit easier. So one pro was that this established the first national government in the United States. So the Articles of Confederation established the first national government. Another pro was that it created the Confederation Congress to help govern the nation. Okay, so those are two pros that we have. 1, 2. All right, and then one of the cons was that it did not provide ways to help banks make sure loans were repaid. So we talked about that a little bit and having to do with Shays Rebellion. So the Articles of Confederation didn't provide any help to the governments, the state governments, to make sure that loans were repaid, or to the federal government to make sure that loans were repaid. Also, the Confederation Congress was not given enough power to govern effectively, meaning that the states had too much power and the Confederation Congress didn't have enough power to actually govern the nation effectively. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with some more pros. Okay, so we have pros here. Some more pros of the Articles of Confederation were that it allowed the states to run their governments independently. So it gave the states power to run their own governments independently. So that was a pro for some states. And then another pro was it did not allow for taxes by the national government. So to the states, this was a pro because they didn't have to pay federal taxes or taxes to the national government. Some other cons that are negative things for the Articles of Confederation were that some states created constitutions that went against the Articles of Confederation. So the article said one thing, the state constitution said another, and since the states had more power, they went against the Articles of Confederation. And then another thing was that some states had their own currencies, making it hard for people to do business in more than one state. So what this means is that each state had their own type of money. So like when you go to a different country, countries have different types of monies or currencies, but states all had different types of currencies. So that'd be like today, if we went to Missouri and wanted to buy something in Missouri, we'd have to use a different type of money than we had in Illinois. So it made it really hard for people to do business with other states or businesses to do business with other states. So it was really difficult in that sense. That was a con or a negative thing. All right, we got one more pro, one more con for you to write down or to type in. We have another pro was that it enabled Congress to create the Northwest Ordinance. So that was a good thing that happened with the Articles of Confederation. But then another con was that the national government's money problems led to violent conflicts like Shays Rebellion. So let me fix that a little bit. Led to violent conflicts like Shays Rebellion. So those money problems, the states having to tax their citizens more to try to pay more to the government, led to some of those problems. All right, so that's all I have for you for chapter 6, lesson 1. So we'll go ahead and stop there for today. Just make sure you have all your assignments completed and have a good rest of your day.